Enter text here. The Israeli army today began destroying Hamas and Islamic Jihad targets in the north with ground artillery and naval operations. Israeli forces are responding to Hamas with artillery, tanks, drones, and warplanes. Israeli forces have been conducting targeted raids in the West Bank to capture Hamas members and clearing Hamas positions in Gaza through air, sea, and even ground operations. Today's Israeli army operations have been remarkable, especially the ground operation and the mobilization of the Merkava main battle tanks. For the past 4 days, the Israeli army has been on high alert in preparation for a ground offensive against Gaza. Currently, 300,000 Israeli soldiers and more than 300 Merkava main battle tanks, as well as Israeli Special Forces soldiers and minesweepers, are surrounding Gaza. The massive Israeli army was preparing to launch the largest ground attack on Gaza since the beginning of the war. However, the special operation was suspended for a long time for critical reasons, especially the Hamas tunnel network in the Gaza Strip and the hostages held in these tunnels. A major operation was conducted prior to the ground operation in Gaza. The IDF began filling the tunnels they had previously identified with water one by one. When all the tunnels were filled with water at the same time, all Hamas residents inside began to evacuate the water. However, due to the high water pressure, many tunnels were flooded and rendered unusable. Hamas relied mainly on the tunnels, and it was after these events that the IDF officially began its ground offensive in Gaza. Israeli tanks crossed the border and began to enter the city. Initially, about 13 Merkava tank units were seen crossing the northern Gaza border. In front of these tanks was the IDF demining bulldozer, Teddy Bear, which with its 15 tons of armor cleared the area of mines and cleared the road. This demining bulldozer provided safe passage for the Israeli Merkava tanks. Israeli tanks crossing this safe corridor began firing artillery. The Israel Defense Forces announced that infantry and tank units carried out overnight a targeted attack on Hamas positions in the northern Gaza Strip. The IDF reported that its soldiers hit a number of Hamas fighters, infrastructure, and anti-tank guided missile launching positions. The IDF stressed that the attack was part of preparations for the final stages of the war and emphasized an all-out ground operation. Israeli soldiers and tanks left the area after destroying Hamas targets. The attack is characterized as the Israeli army's biggest offensive against Gaza since the beginning of the war. IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagar stated that the army would continue its ground offensive in the Gaza Strip and that Israeli air and naval forces were focused on killing senior Hamas members and those involved in the October 7 massacre. The IDF spokesman referred to Israeli air and naval forces supporting ground operations in Gaza. It is known that 60 squadrons of Israeli warplanes are currently supporting the IDF ground operation and have destroyed more than 400 Hamas targets in recent days. In addition, the Israeli Navy reported the destruction of 6 more Hamas divers attempting to reach Ashkelon from Gaza. Israel is on high alert with patrols and attack boats against Hamas members attempting to launch attacks on Israeli cities from Gaza. Supporting attacks from land and sea gives Israel a great advantage. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant made critical comments on this issue. Gallant pledged that Israel will use all its military might to win the war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip and will work for the return of the more than 200 hostages held there. Gallant declared that the Israeli army will continue its ground attacks against Gaza come what may and that it will be responsible for the deaths of 400 Israelis. The Israeli defense minister also stated that the ground operation will continue until the last Hamas militant in Gaza is eliminated and that the next 75 years will largely depend on the success of this war. In order for the IDF to achieve its goal of completely destroying Hamas, it must first strike Hamas infrastructure, command centers, tunnels, rocket launchers, and other Hamas-controlled assets. There is an extensive network of tunnels under the city, and experts believe that this is where the hostages are being held. Therefore, the IDF ground operation must proceed with precision because Hamas has ample time to set booby traps and explosives. Although Israeli forces have already entered Gaza, They will now face threats such as drones, unstable ammunition, improvised explosive devices, and modern anti-tank guided weapons. Hamas has Iranian support for such a war, and Iran has made great strides in asymmetric warfare, especially in the use of drones. Therefore, the IDF must take many factors into account when preparing for a ground offensive. Israeli tanks will not be able to be used in the tunnels, but will face threats from above and below, which means they will need the support of infantry and other units. However, control of the streets is likely to be limited by the ability of Israeli forces in Gaza to counter the threat posed by tanks and infantry. The IDF's Merkava tank is one of the best main battle tanks in service today. Tanks are vulnerable to airstrikes and anti-tank missiles, but the Merkava's capabilities can overcome these weaknesses. An Israeli incursion into Gaza with strong tank units, armored vehicles and bulldozers could easily impede Hamas reconstruction. In addition, today the Israeli army destroyed militant positions on the southwestern front of Gaza, the eastern West Bank, the northern front of the Lebanese border and the Syrian Golan Heights. Israeli ground and naval air forces attacked militant positions along the Gaza border throughout the day. Local raids began and Israeli special operations units conducted raids on Hamas headquarters following drone reconnaissance. The Israeli Air Force conducted more than 120 airstrikes in the direction of Syria, on the Lebanese border and in Gaza. In particular, airstrikes in Gaza destroyed 2 Hamas command centers, dozens of rocket launching pads and secret subway tunnels. One of the most striking events of the day was the Israeli army's intense airstrikes on Gaza, in which 2 senior Hamas leaders were killed. Following Hamas rocket attacks launched from Gaza today, an air raid alert was issued in central Israel, including Tel Aviv, Rishon LeZion, Ben Gurion Airport, Ramla and several other cities. The Israeli army also claimed to have hit several Hamas targets in recent hours, focusing on the Jabalia, Sunan Eilar and Beitan areas of Gaza. The IDF destroyed dozens of mortar launchers and a drone command center. In an official statement, the Israel Air Defense Forces claimed to have killed 2 Hamas militant commanders a week after the militants began their deadly attacks on communities in southern Israel. The Israeli military reiterated its call to advance south. The Israeli army also claimed that Hamas Air Command Chief Murad Abu Murad had been neutralized in an airstrike against a militant target in the Gaza Strip.